my tough.
What's up, everybody? It's Mover, cwlemoine. If you like books, check out the Spectre series or the Alex Shepard series, military aviation thrillers for the Spectre series, or terrorism police thrillers for the Absolute Vengeance series. It does help support the channel. Today's episode is kind of another serious topic, a very serious topic, the COVID-19 pandemic, coronavirus, and how it's affecting me personally, the airlines, and actually military flying in the reserve. And they kind of go hand in hand because there's very few airline pilots that were former military pilots that don't do a reserve gig until the retirement. So it's kind of a hand-in-hand thing. And I kind of want to explain where we are today, because there's some breaking news just today about Delta Airlines, and kind of 5 things that I think for young aspiring pilots, because I do a lot of mentorship on the channel, and I get a lot of questions from people asking, well, should I go airlines or should I go military? Or should I go military then airlines? And there are probably 5 basic rules or 5 basic lessons learned that we can get out of this to help the next generation of pilots to kind of cope, because this is not the first time this has happened and it's not the last. So let's get started with kind of where we are. As far as the airlines go, the biggest breaking news is Delta Airlines just announced that they are now parking 600 of their aircraft. That is half their fleet. Mostly 767s and the Mad Dog fleet, the MD-88s and 90s, I believe, as well as almost 10,000 employees are taking their voluntary leaves of absences. That's a 70% reduction in capacity. United Airlines is pretty much the same. I think it's 60 or 70%, and American Airlines is drawing down capacity as well, because the global demand is just not there to support it. On the pilot side, the problem with kind of how the media does things is they don't separate pilot agreements from other work groups. Pilots are all unionized. United and Delta are ALPA, and American Airlines is APA. They all did letters of agreement with their companies to have paid leaves of absences, various levels of leaves of absences, 55 hours, 50 hours of paid leaves of absence, where you basically don't fly but maintain some level of currency. APA did a great job, and I was very happy to see this with American Airlines, where they came up with 3 different leaves of absences. One, a voluntary short term, where you have 1 month, 3 months, or 6 months, where you get paid 55 hours times your pay rate. You get full benefits, you get everything. All you have to do is maintain currency before you come back, and you come back with your seniority and everything's fine. There's a voluntary extended leave of absence, where you take a year off with no pay. You don't get 401k, you don't get vacation or anything like that, but you come back at your seniority, which is really good for military types or those with other jobs. And then they're doing voluntary permanent leaves of absences, where pilots who are 62 to 65, who happen to be the highest risk category for the COVID-19 virus, can take permanent leaves of absence, where they get paid, I think it's 50 hours a month, and it just goes till they retire. So 50 hours a month until the end. United's very similar. I don't know the specifics, but I think it's about 50 hours of pay, and I think Delta is right around the ballpark. The thing to understand about that is it's seniority and equipment based. So when we bid stuff, it's by 4-part bid status. So equipment type, 767, 737, stuff like that, and your seniority within that group. And that's how these leaves of absences are going to be bid. So some people may not even be eligible, especially the junior of the pilot group, those that would actually be furloughed. I'll talk about furloughs here in a second. So they're seniority based. Some people may not see them. It may not be an option. I'm sure that the wide bodies, so 777, 777, 78s, those that are drawing down, because obviously international demand is much lower, those are going to be the groups that get first crack at the paid leaves of absences, and then the unpaid will trickle down from there. That is as we sit right now. That's assuming it doesn't get any worse, and that's the problem. Every day we have new news like Delta of things getting worse, and there's a cutoff between furlough and leave of absence. So the way it works, airlines have to train pilots. It's a cost. It's a cost to go to the schoolhouse. It's a cost to get a type rating. Airlines pay for that. To take a pilot off the payroll and furlough them, they lose their qualifications, and when they come back, they have to go through indoctrination training. They have to go through all the basic training to get back to their original seniority, assuming they even come back. It is very expensive at the back end. So typically what I've heard is if it's between a year and a half and greater, that's when furloughs make sense. But if the company thinks it's going to be a year or less, they won't furlough. Instead, they'll go through these voluntary paid leaves of absences, because it's cheaper to pay somebody 50 hours a month to kind of sit and wait versus having to pay the cost of training them back up, getting them back on property, going through all the paperwork and furlough pay, all that stuff. So it's sometimes more cost effective to pay somebody just to sit than it is to take them off the payroll and bring them back later on, hoping they even come back. It's kind of a training expense thing. However, we think COVID-19, a lot of people think it's a V recovery. So, it's going to crash the market essentially, which is what's happening now. It's like at 19,000 for the Dow. And then once everything settles down, then it'll come back up, and we'll be back with a roaring economy, and the underlying market forces will be good. That's the hopeful assumption. In as far as how it's affecting me, if you remember, I talked about I have to go to 7-6 school later this month. Right now, that's still on. They are still scheduling me to go. The 767, however, will be retired 1 May. So at my airline, it's a combined type rating, 75, 76. So the 757 will be around for another year, and then from there, it's called a displacement. I'll go back to a different airplane. That's assuming I even go, because right now there are talks, rumors in the media, which I don't know if it's going to happen, of a domestic travel ban shutdown, because obviously groups of 10 people, which is what the CDC recommends, no more than gathering of 10 people, you can't do that with air travel when you're stuffed into a tin can, 150 people, 80 people or whatever. At air travel. Air travel is the highest risk for transmitting these diseases, because you take a carrier and you transmit him 2,000 miles away, and all of a sudden, now you've just infected another group of people. So I suspect we will see some level of shutdown for domestic flying in the near future. And when that happens, number one, it'll be worse for the airlines, but I think overall it'll be a good thing, because we can just rip the Band-Aid off and be done with this. But number two, that's just going to make matters worse, and airlines need to fly. The aircraft have to move in order to, for maintenance purposes, just for cost. Because they're still paying for the airplanes whether they're sitting or whether they're moving. So you'll still have that cost. So with a bailout, it's going to be very interesting. If they do shut down the airspace system and they do keep parking jets, I don't see how you avoid furloughs. I just don't, because it is just even that 1 year. It's going to take that long for air travel to get it back to where it was, and to get the economy back to where it needs to be to support these things. So I hate to be doom and gloom, but I suspect things will get much worse before they get better. And I think you're going to start to see furloughs from all the airlines of, maybe 1,500 to 3,000 pilots per pilot group. Now, realize that's 3,000 out of 15,000. But that's still, a considerable amount. So with that said, this is not the first time this has happened. So I've always been kind of neutral on the airlines as a career. I've talked about this before and kind of aggravated some people on airline pilot forums, because, I kind of backed into the airline thing. I really never wanted to be an airline pilot, but I'm glad I did. But there's some kind of things you need to know about the airlines before you go head in. We have been in an unprecedented level of growth for a while. And that level of growth with retirements may be what prevents furloughs. The retirements may be the silver bullet that keeps them from having a furlough, and they can just use the temporary leaves of absences, because we've never seen retirements like this, because the last time this happened, they went from age 60 retirement to age 65, which kicked the can 5 years, stagnated the industry, and kind of made the rich get richer, in the sense that they got to stick around and there was no upward growth, because airlines are seniority based. It is not based on merit. It is not based on how good you are in the aircraft or how good you are at your job. It's based on when you got hired and how long you've been there. And that's just how unions work and seniority-based systems work. So you have to have the top retire, and you have to have people underneath you get hired in order for you to progress from, you know, a narrow body FO or first officer to a captain and a wide body. I mean, it's just you have to have that seniority movement. This is not the first time though. I have flown with captains, and you know, you hear the story. Since deregulation, airlines have been up and down and up and down. I've heard of guys in the early 90s get hired and be told, you know, you can back the dump truck full of cash up to your house. You'll never have to worry about this again. And then 6 months later, they got furloughed. And then, you know, in the 80s, they had the A scale, B scale, where you had two people doing pretty much the same job. One guy's getting paid $20 an hour, and the other guy's getting $100 an hour to do the exact same job. You know, in the 2000s, after 9/11, airlines went bankruptcy, more furloughs. You know, as it was going up, things were kind of okay, not really great. Furloughs happened. We call it the lost decade, to where there was people were laid off. People did flow back, so they were at a major U.S. airline and had to flow back to a regional and be regional there, and there was animosity, butting heads for that. And then even 2008, you know, hiring froze, the market froze. So anytime somebody says the good days are here to stay, or they make a comment, or you hear a comment like we'll never lose money again, don't believe it. The airline industry is just not reliable enough as a career that you can say, you know, you're going to have the best career of your life. People told me that when I got hired. They said, well, you're 32 years old. Yeah. Oh yeah. You'll have an amazing career. You'll never get furloughed. Things will be great. I am currently at risk of getting furloughed right now. That's just the way it is. So with that said, knowing that things are cyclical, number two, have a backup plan. And by that I mean, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Somebody once told me that airline living or being an airline pilot is the best part-time job they've ever had. And the most successful people are the ones that treat it like a part-time job, that when they're off, they pursue other ventures, whether that's military. So that is a very common question. People go, well, should I get seniority now or do the military? The military is a great option. It is a great backup plan. You know, when downturns happen, the military ebbs and flows. It's just as cyclical on the military side, on the reserves, I'm talking reserve and guard, as it is on the airline side. So when the airlines are doing really well, usually it's really easy to get a full-time guard reserve job because nobody wants it. And it's hard to get a part-time job. When the airlines are doing poor, now people go, okay, well, I'm going to go back to my guard job. They do full-time guard orders to bridge that gap. 2 weeks ago, units all over the country were advertising AGR, which is an active guard reserve job, full-time orders. You know, they just couldn't get enough people. Now you're going to start to see it swinging the other way. But having that ability, and I've talked to many captains that have flown with me that have said, man, I wish I hadn't gotten out at 10 years. I wish I'd gone the full 20 because it's just a buffer. And then when you get to retirement, you're getting another retirement paycheck. So staying in and having that backup plan is good. It doesn't have to be military though. Having something else other than the airlines. You can be in real estate. You can have a second job, small business. You can have something you're passionate about. When I talk to people who are asking me what kind of degree to get, I go, well, look, get a degree that you enjoy, that you could use as a job if you ever couldn't be a pilot anymore. Because it's not just the economy. You could lose your medical and not be able to fly either. So having a solid backup plan that you can put food on the table and enjoy is awesome. So it's nice to diversify. It's nice to have multiple options because you just never know. And on that note, for military, by the way, technically, kind of furloughed from that too right now because of COVID-19. This is unprecedented, but units are saying if you live outside of 50 miles because of the DoD travel restrictions, you can't go to drill. You can't go and fly. You can't physically be there. So I don't know how long that'll last, but that's still something to think about is, you know, you won't always have aviation backup options. So it's good to have stuff that's grounded, that you can do, that you can reliably make money off of and provide for yourself in the event that being a pilot just won't work. Now, obviously, the military thing is going to be temporary, but the airline thing could be years. I mean, it could be a 10-year furlough like it was last time after 2001. Number three, timing is everything. And, you know, they always say it's all about luck and timing. On the same note that I tell people, hey, go to the military, the cyclical nature, sometimes it's just out of your control. I tell people, if you can get your seniority number early and then do military, do that. The earlier you can get that seniority number, the more protected you are from situations like this. Somebody who got hired 2 years ahead of me is more protected, and I could have gotten hired in 2014, and I didn't. So I would be in a better position if I'd gotten hired in 2014 than I am now, as far as seniority goes, because that could be the difference. So the longer you wait to go get that airline job, you might find yourself on the outside looking in. So timing is everything, and the more you can influence that, don't wait, don't delay, get in as quickly as possible. Get in that guard unit as quickly as possible, so that in the situation, for example, if you're an airline guy on the other side trying to go to a guard unit and that cyclical swap happens, you're not now trying to get into a unit that has too many qualified applicants, because everybody's trying to do it. So it's all about timing. It's all about do it as quickly and as early as you can for both the military and the airline side and the reserves. And that could be the difference between being furloughed or being employed, or being a guard AGR and not having a job once your airline job goes away with the market. All right, number 4, live below your means. This is kind of some Dave Ramsey stuff here, but it should be common sense. I had a captain in training. My training captain said, you always keep your FO wife and your FO house. And I never could figure out what he meant, but it means live below your means. A lot of people, when they see the bigger salaries, because airline pilots do make good money, in the $150,000 to $200,000, even $300,000 range, they start to spend in accordance with their new salary. And that's great, but when you lose that and get into a situation where they're offering 55-hour lines, I look at 55 hours. If they offered that to me right now, I'd be like, holy crap, this is awesome. This is a lot of money, because I've limited my expenses and I budget and I live below my means. But if I have seen some captains who have multiple ex-wives, they got kids in college, they've got big houses, they've got toys they've got to pay for, and they go, look, I could not live off of 55 hours a month. I just can't do it. And they're now in trouble. So even though the option exists that might be able to save them in general, they can't take it. They can't take that early out. They can't go enjoy their retirement because they're chained to that level of income. So living below your means, especially in an industry that could go away at any moment. We're just talking furloughs. The company could go bankrupt and just go away completely. It's happened before. Eastern Airlines, TWA. You could get stapled at the bottom of another airline through a merger. So living below your means, if you lose that pay, you've got a cushion. You should have, they say 6 months, really a year. You should have the ability to live without income for at least a year. And that'll kind of keep you safe in this it's a very volatile industry, even though for the last 5 years, it's been like gangbusters. It's been amazing. We never thought anything would happen. And finally, for mental health, I've talked about this before. You need to have a life outside of flying for money. You need to have hobbies. And the reason that's important is because of mental health. Right now, a lot of folks are going to be sitting at home twiddling their thumbs, and their identity is tied to being a pilot, whether it's an airline pilot or even a military pilot. Like in my case, I can't go fly the T-38. Having a hobby like building an RV, I recommend Van's Aircraft, because those are some great kits and it's a great way to pass time. I'm not a builder, but I've been to their factory, had a great time there, and there are a lot of folks that would enjoy building it. So having a hobby like that, or building a race car, driving a race car, being into shooting sports, being into fitness, Writing is for me. I liked writing books. I've written 10 of them. So having something that's outside of that identity, so that when you lose it, because I've been there before. When I was diagnosed with kidney disease and I was grounded for 7 months, and then I came back and then was waiting to transfer to the Air Force Reserve, I had 2 years where I wasn't flying anything pointy nose, and I was depressed. I did not know how to handle not being a fighter pilot. My identity was gone. So having hobbies and being able to disassociate yourself is a very good thing for your mental health, especially in a time like this. Even if it's just, hanging out with your dogs or something, just having something else so that you're not that typical airline pilot, that's all you have, that's who you are, that's just your identity. So anyway, those are kind of 5 things. I don't know what I would call this, 5 truths about being an airline pilot or whatever, but we're in for a bumpy ride. There's a lot of stuff going on. I recommend Blanco Lirio's channel. He does more of a news thing. Mine's more of an educational, editorial spin on this. I will keep you updated if I do not go to training, because right now I am planning next week to go 7.6 school for an aircraft that I probably will never fly. I might fly the 7.5, but we'll see what happens with that. But it is very interesting times, and I think it's going to get worse, sadly, before it gets better. But I do think overall, I think everything's going to be okay. I think we're going to emerge through this better than we were, and I think a lot of people are going to see this, and having gone through this, will be stronger, and will take some of this advice, and you know, they'll learn how to live without chasing the almighty dollar, and will learn how to diversify and be better and be more self-reliant, because at the end of the day, you're the only person that you can rely on. You really can't rely on the government or the airlines or corporations or anything like that. It has to be in here. So anyway, that's my soapbox. I hope you enjoyed this channel. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'll keep you updated. More Corvette content coming up, and we'll do a mailbag soon. Oh, by the way, if you do want to send me something in the mailbag, the new address is now MoverMailbag at cwlemoine.com, and I'm no longer accepting packages through the P.O. Box due to the coronavirus thing, so don't send me anything until this is all over. Anyway, hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Excuse me. Oh, no. Oh! Meant a lot of that. Usually fly with the doors off. Don't be a douche. That's rule number 1. Make them tell you no.